I don't really know how to start this one.
You're the one for me, that's why I give you everything.
Hi everyone and welcome back to Book It. I am Sav Lewis and today we are going to be diving into another book review. Today we are going to be talking about Jennette McCurdy's autobiography, I'm Glad My Mom Died. And in all honesty, I'm glad her mom died too. So I will say before we start, this video does contain spoilers about the book. There's also the formal trigger warning. This will include drugs, alcohol, and very high on eating disorders and emotional manipulation. So if any of that bothers you, please go ahead and click on off for your mental health and for my mental sanity, and we'll go ahead and jump right in. So to start, for those who don't know who Jennette McCurdy is, she was very popular on a Nickelodeon show called iCarly, and then went on to do Sam and Cat. So she basically was my childhood. She was the the bad, rebel kid that everybody loved. Super funny, super fun to be around. Sam Puckett and her buttersock were iconic. So that's where she is known from. She was a child actor on Nickelodeon. She did deal with Dan Schneider, and as we all know, he's a pervert. So so basically, okay. So she came out with this book earlier this year. I hadn't even heard about it until a week and a half or 2 weeks leading up to it, when she did a whole interview about it and was I basically wrote my entire feelings down. So people knew that there was some things wrong originally, because when iCarly decided to do a reunion and bring back their show for another season or whatever, she was not in the original cast. Miranda Cosgrove did speak on it, saying that she tried to get Jennette McCurdy to come back, but Jennette refused. And then we do see later on in the book, Jennette does talk about how Miranda tried to get her to come back, and she told her she could not put herself through that again. So the book kind of starts off about how Jennette McCurdy got her first acting job when she was 6 years old, and it was her mom's dream. She was the only daughter. She had two brothers, and basically she grew up very poor. Her mother was a hoarder, and she was basically, all the money that she made for Nickelodeon was used for the family. And then the big theme throughout the book is how she does have a serious eating disorder because of what her mother called calorie restriction. Basically, where her mom would not let her eat certain foods, or would do these crazy, unrealistic diets with her to try to keep her as thin as possible, for acting purposes. So when she booked the show iCarly, that was her big breakthrough. She had done little things here and there, but iCarly was the big breakthrough. I'm going to go ahead and put this book down. Was the big way for her to become a star. So something that was very important in the show was that she remained very thin. She was playing as a 16-year-old girl, and she wanted to make sure that she, continued to look that part. So I don't even know where to really start with this. I have so many notes on this. My note sheet is so big. So let's first just talk about her mom. Her mom is so toxic. I'm sorry, but she is. Any woman who puts their child through this must have something wrong. And Jennette does address this multiple times throughout the book, of that she knew her mom was unhealthy. Her mom was a cancer survivor, and then ended up getting cancer again, and then that ultimately caused her to die later on in life. But she basically just completely destroyed the mental and physical health of her daughter, trying to make her daughter a superstar and to live vicariously through her. So she's doing iCarly. She becomes really good friends with Miranda Cosgrove, and she mentions multiple times throughout the book that Miranda was kind of her her safety. Miranda was her best friend, and they were connected at the hip, just like in the show, and that relationship really helped her through a lot of her hard times. So that's probably like the one good thing that comes out of this, is that Miranda Cosgrove really did her best as a child who probably had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. She then talks about how when her mother got sick again, she had a lot of anxiety and a lot of shame, and she had to do a bunch of stuff on her own for the first time, which was very not okay with her mother. So she has an entire couple of chapters based on when she became a country music star for a very short time, right kind of in between the iCarly and the Sam and Cat phase, where she was a country music star and she was living in Nashville by herself in hotels, and she was eating like foods that her mother would be deemed, you're not supposed to eat that, which was really interesting for her to watch. She talks about how she became seriously addicted to alcohol, and that there were some drugs involved as well, and that she had a bunch of very unhealthy relationships with people who are often a lot older than she was and would take advantage of her young age and her nativity. So let's dive into Nickelodeon. So Nickelodeon lied to her multiple times on multiple different, fronts. So she got iCarly. She was very excited to have iCarly. She was originally supposed to have a spin-off show from iCarly that was about Sam Puckett and that whole thing. Which I don't remember what she says the name of it was supposed to be, but she does talk about how she was told that she was going to get her own spin-off show, and she was very excited about that and stuff like that. And then it ended up becoming a Sam and Cat thing, where she did partner with Ariana Grande, who at the time was starting her own music career and was taking off many days of filming to go do this and that and whatever. And Jennette talks about how that really bothered her, was that she was originally promised her own show, and then when she got a show with somebody else, that she was expected to be on set all day, every day, never late, always doing this stuff, while Ariana Grande was off, taking days off, weeks off to do shows and different interviews, and she was like hosting a bunch of award shows and all this stuff, basically starting her career, and how she would come in and she would talk to, Jennette about what's going on in her life, because she was like, I'm becoming a superstar, and that really just bothered Jennette. She did talk about that in here. I think somewhere in it she did mention like that she was kind of sorry to Ariana Grande for how she acted, but she was just getting very angry over the entire thing. And then she basically, after that show was done and over, she stopped acting altogether. She has done a few little parts, but just acting for her as a whole just hasn't really worked out. I think the last thing that she did was a show that was on Netflix. I don't know if it was by Netflix, but she mentioned something about she was on a show, kind of had something along the lines of Netflix. So towards the end of the book, she does talk about how her mother does get sick again, and she goes to, see her and be with her. And, her mother does pass away. But before she does, she talks about how, like, her mom just sucked. I mean, that's just, like, the nicest way to put it. I can't sum it down any other way or make it sound any better. Her mom sucked. No offense to Jennette McCurdy. But the way that she writes this book was so great. This book, I read it in a day. It was, as you can see, my notes. My notes for this book were kind of funny. So I had, wow, speechless, and oh my God, because that's how the book was. The things that some of the things her mother would say to her was like, whoa. The way that she would like keep her weight so low, and how that really affected her mental and physical shape, to try to like keep her in this like really little petite figure is just absolutely astonishing. It is a harder read than most of like the fun fiction books that I've read before. It's a harder read than that, but it was a very good one. So I do know that before this book came out, she does mention that Nickelodeon offered her X amount of money to not release this book, to not talk about them, to not talk about how they kind of screwed her over. I don't like how this light's like. How they basically asked her to not mention them in their book because of it. So with that being said, I hope, girl, you made twice as much money as they offered you. I hope you got your bag, sis, because this book was really good. I think this is probably one of the best autobiographies I've ever read. I think that it was not only well written, but I really did feel some of the pain that she went through. And in all honesty, I look back on my childhood. And my childhood was the iCarly, Big Time Rush, Victorious. Like, that all happened during when I was a child and would watch Nickelodeon. And Sam Puckett was someone that I related to, just because she was like, you know, a little bit edgier. I wasn't, like, I liked Carly, but I didn't relate to Carly. Carly was like the little, you know, goody two-shoes, did this, that. Sam was the one that was like a little more rough around the edges, and I really liked that. And I really liked that her character like would make me smile and laugh. When she did Sam and Cat, I did end up watching Sam and Cat for Sam. So Jennette McCurdy, I know that what you went through was absolutely terrible, and no one should ever have to go through any of the things you did. But I do want to thank you from me and probably more people of my age generation, my mid or early mid, oh my god, I was gonna say mid-20s, no, early 20s. Thank you for giving me a great childhood and being like a great role model, and I am so sorry for everything you went through. As always, Dan Schneider sucks, so he can go himself. But so I haven't written up my Goodreads review yet, but I will say this book is a 5 out of 5, a must read. If you haven't read this book and you're like, what am I going to read next? I understand if people are like, I don't like to read. I read a lot of fiction or a lot of fantasy, you know, style books, fiction. I do too. My entire library is just, you know, mostly fiction books. This is a book that I say you have to read, even though it's not like a fun story. It is very dark. It is very sad. It makes you like rethink and think back to your childhood. What were you doing when all this was happening? But it's an amazing book, and I think that everyone should read this. So 5 out of 5 for this. I'm basically, my Goodreads is just gonna say like, hey, your mom sucked. But this was a great book. I'm very glad that she wrote this. My favorite quote from this book is one that she actually talked about in an interview, and she read it out loud for the interview as well. I think this was when she was filming Sam and Cat, and she was talking about like how Ariana Grande was coming in and doing all these awesome projects, and she really wanted that. She really craved that. The quote was, I'm becoming an angry person with no tolerance for anyone. I'm aware of this shift and yet have no desire to change it. If anything, I want it. It's armor. It's easier for me to be angry than to feel pain underneath it. And that is so powerful. So, Jennette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died. Final rating, I'm glad her mom died too. Honestly, best wishes to her and her family. And go out and get this book. I will go ahead and link my Goodreads down below, so you can go ahead and give that, you know, a little follow, comment on what do you think. And also down below, let me know, did you enjoy this book? Do you think that her mom also sucked, or did you take a different route and think that her mom was doing what was best for her at the time, or think that her mom was just trying to do better? Please let me know what you think. Go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!